everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Allie, and today we are going to be doing like the shortest wrap up I've done in so long, in well over a year. Both February and March were pretty rough months in terms of my reading slump. February I actually did read like 4 books, so like it's not bad. But in March, March was much worse for me. I'm not sure why. Usually March is one of my best reading months of the year, so that is a little concerning, but I don't know what happened. I can't explain it, and I think it's just because like no book recently has like wowed me, at least like in this year, like in 2023. I feel like I have not read a book that has blown me away in any sort of capacity. And I just think it's a little weird because it's not like I'm like a super picky reader or anything like that. So I don't know what's going on. I still haven't gotten to like the root of the problem. I do feel like the books that I'm reading right now are promising, and I am rereading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, so that is obviously like one of my favorite books of all time, so that's really nice. But yeah, I really need to read some books that I'm just going to like 100% head over heels fall in love with. But March just was not my month, so we should just get into the 2 books that I read in March. I'm so sorry that this is going to be a little disappointing, but no one is going to suffer in this reading slump as much as I did. So the first book that I read in the month of March was A Broken Blade by Melissa Blair. And this is a book that was very popular on TikTok and actually kind of like was sort of a product of TikTok, if that makes any sense. Basically, this book, the way that the promotion happened was that a bunch of book talkers received this book, like an arc of this book, without the name of the author, and kind of like a scavenger hunt in order to find who the author was. And I think that that is really, really cool and super inventive and interesting, and I love that idea. And so that really intrigued me to read this book, and I found it on Hoopla, so I was like, you know what, let's just give it a try. I needed something, like I was trying to find something that I could hook myself onto and really, really enjoy. Unfortunately, that book wasn't going to be this one. I felt like the book was really interesting. It had like an interesting premise, but the execution just didn't really do it for me. And I feel like the #1 reason why I didn't really connect to this story, like I did give it a 3 out of 5 stars, so I didn't hate this book or anything. I did find it to be enjoyable to read, but it just didn't get to like a 4 or 5 for me. But I feel like the #1 reason why it didn't reach that level was because it kind of suffers from something that I have seen from a lot of recent YA and even adult fantasy novels, and that is that it's not really a full like story arc. There's no like inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, conclusion sort of thing. It's not even like a 3-act story structure. It's not any sort of actual story structure. It's more so just a collection or series of scenes, and it's almost episodic in a way, but it just doesn't feel like there is a lot of connection between each scene. As somebody who comes from a background of fan fiction, and I'm sure a lot of you have also read a lot of fan fiction in your lives, it's kind of that thing where when you're writing fan fiction, especially on a place like fanfiction.net or like any of the other fan fiction sites, you're writing it by chapter. So you'll put out the first chapter, and then you'll write the second chapter, put that out, and then you'll write the third chapter, put that out, fourth, you know, so on and so on. That's kind of how it felt. Like it wasn't written as one complete story, but more so as chapter by chapter by chapter, which can work for some readers. Some readers might really enjoy that, and I don't think that that's necessarily like a bad way to write a story, but personally for me and my taste of storytelling, it didn't really work. I just find that kind of storytelling to be really stilted, especially if it's not being put out chapter by chapter. But I feel like when you're keeping up with a specific fan fiction story, whatever, and you're reading it as the chapters come out, it's a bit more fun. It keeps you kind of engaged, and you don't really notice how disjointed the story is. Some fan fiction writers do a really good job at like connecting the whole story and making it feel really complete. Other fan fiction writers aren't as good at putting all the story together, especially when they're writing it chapter by chapter and not all at one time. So personally for me, that kind of storytelling just doesn't work, at least not in this format. I feel like it works better when you're online and you're just like and you just have each chapter as like very separate specific things. Something that I did really enjoy in this book was the representation of alcoholism. I have like never seen that really fully represented in a fantasy novel, and I thought that that was really intriguing and really well done. I also felt it did a really good job at being its own story while also garnering interest and intrigue for the sequel, so I will be really interested in reading the sequel whenever it pops up on Hoopla, and I can't wait to see what else this author ends up writing in the future. So the second and last book that I read in March, I know this is so short already. I tried to talk a lot about the first book, but I mean, I can only say so much. And the second book that I ended up reading in March was A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. I gave this book a 4 to 5 stars, and I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was, you know, like objectively a really great fantasy novel. It's not my favorite fantasy novel of all time, and I do think that I actually prefer her YA series that I read a while ago, The Queen's Rising. I really enjoyed that duology so much. It was just so awesome and amazing, beautiful, iconic. But this one, I just had a hard time connecting, you know, throughout the entire book, which was a little annoying and upsetting. I don't know if it was necessarily the way that the story was told or the characters or just like all of the secrets that were being kept to, you know, create an intriguing story, but there was just something that I was not connecting to, and I don't know, it might be the amount of characters. There was a lot of characters in this book, and it took me a while to keep them all straight in my mind and remember who was talking and remember which person, which character that we were talking to or about. And some of the storylines started to kind of get a little bit muddled in my brain. So it was a little bit confusing to read, I will say. I mean, I feel like the story and the entire premise of the book is a little convoluted, so I will read the synopsis because I don't know if I could do a good job at bringing it out of my head myself. It says, Jack Tamerlane hasn't set foot on Cadence in 10 long years, content to study music at the mainland university. But when young girls start disappearing from the Isle, Jack is summoned home to help find them. Enchantments run deep on Cadence. Gossip is carried by the wind, plaid shawls can be as strong as armor, and the smallest cut of a knife can instill fathomless fear. The capricious spirits that rule the Isle by fire, water, earth, and wind find mirth in the lives of the humans who call the land home. Adira, I can't remember how to pronounce her name, heiress of the East and Jack's childhood enemy, knows the spirits only answer to a bard's music, and she hopes Jack can draw them forth by song, enticing them to return the missing girls. As Jack and Adira reluctantly work together, they find they can make better allies than rivals as their partnership turns into something more. But with each passing song, it becomes apparent the trouble with the spirits is far more sinister than they first expected, and an older, darker secret about Cadence lurks beneath the surface, threatening to undo them all. I think that there were just like a few things that kind of confused me, and I think the biggest one that really confused me was like the rivalry between I believe it was like the North and the South or something like that, or the West and the East. I can't remember. It was some sort of direction. Like there's the West part of the Isle and an East part of the Isle or something like that. And I just couldn't really grasp onto why there was this rivalry. Like what was going on? Was it like some sort of like long held rivalry that like no one really knows why it started, but like everybody's willing to uphold it, kind of like a Romeo and Juliet situation? Or was it like a racism allegory or like a xenophobia allegory or something like that? I didn't really understand it personally, and I don't feel like the book did a really good job at explaining it to the reader. I mean, if you've read the book and you totally understood it, please feel free to try to explain it to me in the comments, because I could not understand why there was the rivalry. It just didn't make sense. And like, I understand why the rivalry was put into the book, because it like affects certain plot points in the book and makes certain things possible, but I just didn't understand where it came from. I don't get it. Maybe the book doesn't even explain it and I'm just being confused. I'm just being confused. I don't know. What I did like, however, was like the rivals to lovers sort of situation that was going on between Jack and Adira. I thought that that was really cute. I really enjoyed that. I liked their banter. I liked, you know, the history that they had between each other. Like, they'd known each other since they were children. They had been around each other since they were children. Their families are really close and like all that. So I thought that was interesting. I did really enjoy the sense of community in this fantasy setting. Like, everybody was very much like looking out for each other and like really, really close and bonded in this community, which I liked. But overall, I just felt really confused like the entire time I was reading this book. I just could not grasp on to some of the plot points or background history stuff that was being explained. And I think that it could also be some of the audiobook narrators. I have a hard time. I don't know if I have an audio processing issue going on. It could be the autism, it could be something else, but I have a hard time listening to audiobooks where there are various accents going on in my ears. I have a really hard time processing accents, especially without like subtitles or like without like the words in front of me. So that could also have been one of the issues for like why I didn't really understand what was going on sometimes in the book. So I kind of wish that I had just gotten the book from Barnes & Noble when I saw it there and bought it then. I'm kind of regretting that now because I would have wanted to read it as a physical book instead of listening to the audiobook. But I mean, that's just on me, really. That's just on me. If you have an easier time with listening to accents and understanding them, it might be a good audiobook for you. I think it was really well done. It's just me. I just can't understand certain accents. But yeah, I mean, I did really enjoy this book overall. I felt like the vibes were there. I felt like the writing was really beautiful. It was just a little convoluted, in my opinion, just a little bit. And that's why it didn't get to a 5-star book. And I think also the ending kind of made me a little iffy about it too. So yeah, at the end of the day, it ended up getting a 4 out of 5 stars, but I do want to read more of Rebecca Ross's books. I am so excited because they're all on Hoopla now, which I'm just like over the moon about. Okay, so those are the 2 books that I read in March. I've already started to read a couple of books for April. Like I said, I'm reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I am also reading this book called Adelaide. I can't remember the author's name, but I am listening to it as an audiobook from Libro FM, and oh my gosh, I am so obsessed with this book. It is so good. It's exactly what I wanted, and honestly, I think that what gets me out of a reading slump now, or like what just gets me excited about reading again, are literary fiction books. I don't know. I can't explain it. I just love a good literary fiction book that it just speaks to me. I don't know. I can't explain it. So I'm reading those 2 books right now. I'm going to try to get to Beach Read and The Midnight Bargain. And then also, of course, I'm going to read Happy Place because I just got the audiobook. And yeah, so I have some really good reading plans. I just hope that April is so much better for me in terms of reading because I'm so over this reading slump. Alright, so those are all the books that I read in March, the books that I'm planning to read in April, and I hope you all enjoyed this video even though it was super short. Let me know down below in the comments what you read in April, and also let me know some tips and tricks to get out of a reading slump because I feel like this is the longest slump I've ever had. Typically my slumps only last maybe a month, maybe a couple weeks, but never like over 2 months. So definitely let me know what you do to get out of a reading slump. And if you did enjoy this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!
Ooh, I thought it'd be me and you.